Good morning, all you cheery people. You seem a little subdued this morning. That's my story. I used to be a dude, now I'm subdued. That's how that works out. Well, good to see you today. It's always, this stage of life, it's always good to be seen, isn't it? Anywhere, at any time. Good to be seen. Okay, well, so my plan, on this class is to I'm doing a virtual tour. It's really a Bible study oriented around a sequence of a tour. So that's what I'm doing. And we've had a hard time getting out of the Dead Sea Valley up to Jerusalem. We keep making a run at it, but we'd never quite arrive. And so my wife said she liked my lesson last week, and so I thought, well, if she likes it, I'll do another one like that, or hopefully like that, and we'll see if we can hit 2 times in a row. Kind of like the Mariners. You're hoping they can do 2 in a row, right? But anyway, so we're gonna go another round, at least one more round on the Psalms of Ascent. I mean, they're great psalms. There's no doubt about that. So it is good to study them. So remember that in the Psalms of Ascent, how many are they in number? What's the number of the Psalms of Ascent? 15, right, 122, 134. No prizes today. I'm out a lot of vegetables. But anyway, so there's 15 Psalms, and they are used in what context did we teach last week? Name me like 3 contexts. If I were giving prizes, that these would be for prizes. In what were the uses of the 15 Psalms? Okay, I'll help you since you seem to be too alert. Yes, sir? Yes, ascending to the temple. So what we said is there are multiple uses. The first is the actual use for which the psalm was written. And then as a pilgrim psalm, as they go up to Jerusalem on the 3 occasions of the year when they were required to go, they were also used by the priests as they ascended the 15 steps into the temple courtyard. So remember we showed the picture last week with the steps there. And the way we're using it is that if we are approaching God, since they used it for that purpose, as they're approaching to God in the holy place, that we can use it similarly to approach God. That's my idea, that if they used it for that purpose, it must be that we could use it for that purpose as well. And so if you're going to approach God, particularly if you're in any kind of difficulty, these psalms are actually quite helpful to you. And they'll focus your thoughts and your spiritual ideas that you need to have in your head. Because if you've got the wrong spiritual ideas in your head, it will be a faith killer. It'll short circuit your faith. But if you have the right ideas, it'll help to build faith. And so we all have situations, and we need God, and these psalms help us with that. And this particular set of psalms, they're not really for us in the same way that it was for them, but it is similar because though the temple is not there, we're all on a journey toward God, hopefully, right? Not away from God. We're on a journey toward God. Temple's gone for a long time, but we're on the same journey. And we're on the same journey toward the kingdom. God changed things. In the Old Testament, he wrote his law on tablets of stone. In the New Testament, he writes his law on the tablets of our heart. So he puts his Spirit within us. If we don't have God's Spirit within us, we don't belong to him. It's the most fundamental, basic definition of what a Christian is a person in whom the Spirit of Christ dwells. Whatever other circumstances might be, if God's Spirit is within you, you're a Christian, you're on your way to heaven. That's the key factor there. So God has put his Spirit within us, but that is toward a kingdom. We are looking for the kingdom. Jesus said, when you pray, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. We are praying for the kingdom, and we're going to have a part in the kingdom. And Jerusalem is going to be at the center of that kingdom. Christ is going to rule in his kingdom from Jerusalem. And even heaven itself is spoken of in what way as it relates to Jerusalem? Is anyone following me on this? It's the New Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven. And there are lots of similarities between the earthly Jerusalem and the New Jerusalem. And we're going to talk about some of those comparisons today as we get toward the end of the class. And that is that there are the 12 gates of heaven. Jerusalem has its gates. And the pilgrim wanted to go within the gates, the walls, and the citadels of Jerusalem. The New Jerusalem has gates with names. It's beautifully built, and it has walls. It's interesting that heaven itself has walls. The New Jerusalem has walls. Just you can apply that however you like to for current events, but there were definitely walls. And we talked about last week, they're called the Psalms of Ascent because in part it's all going up. And a little bit later when we talk about the mountains, the main pilgrim pathway from those coming from the north was down the Jordan River Valley. And so they're coming down here, and they're basically going down a steep valley. There's steep hills on both sides. This is the east bank of the Jordan. That's the country of Jordan today. This is the west bank of the Jordan. That's Judea, Samaria, and Israel proper. But in any case, as you're walking down the pathway, you are amazed by the mountains, and then as you're walking up the mountain, you're amazed at how steep it is. Because it is a stiff climb in a 20-mile hike. You're ascending over 3,000 feet. What Washington State geographic element have I related to the elevation of Jerusalem? Snoqualmie Pass. There you go. I like people that are putting two and two together. Snoqualmie Pass elevation is like Jerusalem, so it's up there a ways. So let us begin with Psalm 120, which is the first of the 15 Psalms of Ascent. And it begins with a place of distress, I would say. In my distress, I called to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver me, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? A warrior's sharp arrows with glowing coals of the broom tree. Woe to me that I sojourn in Meshech, that I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long have I had my dwelling among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. It's interesting, the emphasis here upon deceit, lying lips, and war. Interesting combination of three things: lying lips, deceit, and war. All three of those are about conflict, basically. But for the psalmist to write about lying lips, I mean, why would you care if somebody's lying? Why would you care if they're being deceitful? Well, both of those things lead to conflicts, right? And it seems to be part of the human predicament that people just do a lot of lying. They're just not truthful most of the time. Truthfulness is not a human virtue, I would say. It has to be developed. My father, before he went in the ministry, was a county sheriff. And I remember he told me, and I liked to put him in charge of certain things at the church that called for suspicion, because he said that virtually everybody that he met was lying to him when he was a sheriff. They're all lying. I mean, you're catching them at a bad spot, and they think that they can lie their way out of it. And so he said virtually everyone. It's just, I would guess it's our nature to lie when we're in trouble. And you have to have a serious commitment to do right, to not lie when you're in trouble. Yes, sir. Yeah, well, I mean, and so you're verifying what we've said here, that yes, sir.
The thing
Mom had a wash basin, and she had this 20 mil borax that sat on the box, 20 mil borax, and a wash rag. And I would rather tell the truth than get the wash rag and that 20 mil borax soap in my mouth. Say things wrong. So if we had the proper parents, basically a mother, that left a lasting impression. I'm sure apparently it did, because here you are at this stage of life and you're still remembering. How many of you ever had your mouth washed out with soap? Oh, okay. Well, that was not an uncommon occurrence, apparently. Literally, your mouth washed out with soap. Yeah, no doubt, yes. Wash out their mouth with soap? Well, it'd probably be a pollution problem. There's so much soap be lost. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's the world of politics is just so full of lying. But, you know, it has actually been that way for a long time. When I was a college student, I was chairman of the College Republicans of Oregon. And so at the National Convention, I didn't go to the convention, but I still controlled Oregon's votes. And the people that would call me when they discovered I wasn't there and trying to get my votes for their particular person, I mean, it was a very disgusting picture, because the lying that was going on, I mean, just terrible. I mean, you just hate to be associated with that, and it really turned me off, to tell you the truth, to politics, in that sense, you know. But lying. But you know, the world of the internet is full of lying. And have you ever bought anything that's advertised on the internet? See, that's a mistake, because you know, if it's advertised on the internet, it's a lie. It's just a big bunch of lying. I mean, there's a couple of things that I've ordered over the years that you just never get. You know, it just they just take your money, and that's the end of that. You know, it was just a lie from the beginning. I mean, if it's too good to be true, it is. And then advertising as a whole is just lying. It's how to misrepresent something to get you to part with your money. And just remember this: if it's advertising, what they really want is your money. That's what they really want. And so, you know, a Christian act is to give a good product at a good price, at a fair price. A fair product at a fair price, that is a very Christian thing to do. And it's a very unchristian thing to do, is to give a crummy product at a high price. But that is what lying is all about. But it is interesting that those words, lying and deceit, are at the root of a lack of peace. And David describes it as a warrior's arrow. You know, it's like being attacked. And so he says, I'm for peace, but it doesn't seem like anybody around me is. You know, I want peace, but they don't. And so there's just a lot of deceit, a lot of lying, a lot of intrigue. You know, when you're a king and there is no actual plan of succession, it leads to a lot of intrigue and a lot of issues. So, you know, as a leader, you would have to deal with that. You know, in the Roman world, they didn't, you know, we have a succession plan. So if the president dies, the vice president takes over. And that was the Speaker of the House, is that number 3 on the list? And so there's a sequence that's already laid out. But in the Roman world, that wasn't true. And even when Rome became Christian, they still didn't have that. And so they basically came to the conclusion that whoever the winner was, that was the will of God to be in charge of the Roman Empire. And so they took a very pragmatic viewpoint. What other view could you take? But there's no succession plan. And so the Roman world was always filled with intrigue. You know, always filled with worry about plots and about someone coming after you and, you know, getting an army against you, or assassinations or that sort of thing. It was very much, you know, when you're on top of the pile, apparently there's a lot of insecurity. and you worry about lying, you worry about being deposed. It's like when you don't have any money, you worry that you don't have any money, but when you do have money, you worry you're going to lose the money you have. And so what's true is you're always worried, and so, and these Psalms speak to that as well. Yes, sir. Well, there is that, there are those conflicts. Okay, so the journey, if we're approaching God, generally speaking, here's the point. The journey begins with distress. It begins with distress. There is some kind of distress. And so you want peace, but it seems like nobody else does. Romans 12 has it similarly. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay," says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That's a tall order right there, isn't it? Let God deal with it. Let God deal with the deceivers and the liars and all of that. It's not our job to take revenge on people who do us harm. Yes, sir. Loving your enemies, exactly. You wonder when the coals are going to start falling because you're doing good, so much good, and loving your enemies so much, you're heaping coals of fire on their head. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. You're setting out the objective of where you need to get. I get that. Okay. So I guess the statement is we're in trouble. We're in distress. The old saying is there's 3 stages of life. You're either getting ready to get into trouble, in trouble, or just getting out of trouble. Those are the 3 stages of life that we seem to come to a lot. But then Psalm 121 follows on in a way. I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? That's a question. I think in the old King James, it was without the question. I will lift up mine eyes to the hills from whence cometh my help, or something like that. It was a statement, but it was an incorrect translation here. This way, I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? Not from the hills. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. And so this Psalm, 121, is actually a very comforting psalm. And it's one that we think of when we're in trouble. Verse 3, He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. We all love that psalm, but it is, when you're approaching God, that is the mindset of an approach, because you are presuming that God has an interest in watching over you, and that when you ask for his protection and care, you presume that he has an interest in that, and he does, because he says that he does. This last couple of days I've been doing a little home logging on my property. My neighbor and I, we cut down 3 big trees. I'm getting ready to build a structure for our motorhome, and so I looked at the price of buying a prefab one, and so I'm just going to do it myself. And so I cut down the trees, And I had to, get my boom truck and haul them out of the woods and load them onto my trailer and haul them out. But I had to get it all done the last couple of days because I'm afraid that if the rains come, the field will be too soggy and I won't be able to get my trucks out, which has happened to me last year. Every year I get one of my trucks stuck, either my pickup or this boom truck, because it's a big, heavy thing. It gets stuck in the mud and it sits there until the ground dries out. You can't do a thing about it. But anyway, so I'm doing all of that, getting ready to. There's a guy down by the river who mills the lumber for me, so I'm going to have him mill it into. And then do kind of a board and bat structure like that. So, but all with wood off my own property, which is kind of a fun thing to do. But, when you're falling trees, the old saying is there's not a lot of old loggers in the woods for good reason, right? It's a tough business. So anyway, my neighbor who I'm working on in various ways, he told me. When he got over there, he says, "Yeah, I had a discussion with our maker this morning before we started, and so he let me know that he had prayed that we would have safety, and then I told him the next day that my wife had prayed the same thing, and that I had as well, and so you're praying for safety because it's dangerous, but." On the other hand, why would you even think that God is interested in protecting you? Why would you think that? What makes you think that you're so important that God would watch over you? Well, he said he would. And it's right here. And so our asking for help is not some imposition. It just goes along with what he said. If someone says, hey, if you ever need this or that, call on me. And so if you need this or that, you call on them because you know that they have said they've offered it before you needed it. That's how it is with God. He offers these things. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. That not slumbering part, that's very good. I can... keep an eye on things when my eyes are open, but the moment you go to sleep, it's you're vulnerable, right? Because you're not there to defend yourself. You can't grab your gun and get the intruder if you don't even know he's there. And that's the advantage of a dog. Unfortunately, you got a dog that sleeps through stuff, and so that's not healthy. All the dog does is trip you as you try to get out, right? Or block you from getting out of the bed quickly. And so, but he doesn't slumber. And I've actually used that. I think I've told you the story before, but years ago I was involved in getting a psychic fair canceled. And the psychics were coming to Kirkland, and they were going to do a fair there. And I worked with the Merchant Association where they were coming to the mall, and they canceled it. Well, the psychics were very unhappy with me, and my name appeared in the paper in an unfavorable light, and as one who did this. I always thought if they were good psychics, they should have known it was going to be canceled and wouldn't have bothered to come. But I actually even said that in the paper, which I thought was a win for me. But still, when people are saying bad things about you, and this was the first time that I can recall that having. Since then, I've had a lot of that over the years. A lot of people have spoken poorly of me in the press. But, and you get used to it. It doesn't make much difference after a while. But then it did. And, these are and they're coming to Seattle and they're speaking your name in a vile way. And so I'm worried, at night. And of course, the house we lived in had a tree growing right outside the bedroom window with a branch that brushed up against the house from time to time. And so, you're there, you're with your half awake and you hear something move and, it's the branch slapping against the side of the house, but you're wide awake, and this goes on for a while. And finally, I just said to the Lord, I'm not going to get any sleep if this goes on. And so I'm just going to have to trust you to watch over me while I'm asleep. And it was a literal act of faith to put my trust in Jesus, that what he said in his word is true. And because, these words can be here, but if you don't really believe them, it doesn't do you any good. But literally, that was a significant moment in my life of turning something over to the Lord and realizing that I don't have the wherewithal to take care of myself. I need the Lord's help. And of course, one thing that helps you to prepare for heaven is to get older. Because you realize that there's things you can't do that you once could do, and like I used to be able to run like the wind, I was really speedy. Man, the only thing that running and wind have to do together is I get winded really quick, and so, running across the yard is like wow, I did that. I could take a picture of that. But things change, you're not half the man you used to be. You know that if it came to a fight, you hope it's over quick. Because it's definitely not going to go on a long time. That's for sure. And so, you hope you can strike quickly and win on the first shot, because that's probably the only shot you're going to get. But that in a way, that is good because it keeps you out of the venue of false hope. I would tell my boys when they were growing up, I said, look, don't get in a fight. Whatever you do, don't get in a fight. It's not worth it. You never know what the other guy has, whether he's got a knife or a gun. You just walk away. Your pride doesn't mean a thing. Just walk away. Stay out of the fight if at all possible. I live by that code myself. I can tell you that I've never hit another human being, not from when I was a kid, a youth, adult. I've never been in a fight, and I hope never to be in a fight. Because the prospects for winning are going down dramatically. But he who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. In a hot climate, that's valuable. The sun will not harm you by day, the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He'll watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. That's a great, both now and forevermore. He will always do this. So this is an approach to God. You have to have this spirit, this attitude as you approach God. And the pilgrim, just to go back to the original story, as they approach Jerusalem, they're going to the place where God dwells in that time. They're really coming at God's invitation, his command really, and so they're doing what he's asked of them, but they are reminding themselves that it is the Lord who keeps me. It is the Lord who protects me. It's the Lord who watches over me. And I showed you that picture before of going through the hills. I will lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? Not from these high hills on either side of me. My help comes from higher up. Higher than the hills is my Lord's protection and care. He keeps watch over you both now and forevermore. Yeah, if all roads could be so straight. Although, driving like a motorhome down a road like that can be also a little scary. Because there are big vehicles coming the other way too, and you're coming close to them. But who was the famous singer who sang this song? I'm thinking of Ethel Waters. Wasn't she the one that sang it? Yeah, I think so. But anyway, maybe George Beverly, but same Billy Graham Crusades were definitely sung there. Okay. Now, Psalm 122 has a couple of different ideas that I want to emphasize, but let me just read a little bit of it. I rejoiced with those who said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing in your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built like a city that is closely compacted together. That is where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to praise the name of the Lord according to the statute given to Israel. There the thrones for judgment stand. the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you be secure. May there be peace within your walls and security within your citadels. For the sake of my brothers and friends, I will say, peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity. Well, there's just in terms of the virtual tour, let me just show you a couple of things. This is the old city of Jerusalem, and I'm going to emphasize the gates. So here are the gates. This is the eastern gate, or the Golden Gate, the Lion's Gate, Herod's Gate, Damascus Gate, New Gate, Jaffa Gate, Zion's Gate, Dung Gate. The gates have, like the Jaffa Gate is, if you go down this way, you end up at Joppa or Jaffa. So if you, from Damascus, or the Damascus Gate, if you go up this way, you end up in Damascus. Herod, named for Herod the Great. The Lion's Gate, also known as St. Stephen's Gate, well, I'll talk about that in a moment. And the Golden Gate leads to the Mount of Olives. This is the one that's closed and through which Christ will return one day. The 12 gates, as they were in ancient times, the Sheep Gate, Fish Gate, Old Gate, Valley Gate, Dung Gate, Fountain Gate, Water Gate, Horse Gate, East Gate, anyway. And this person had the gates of Jerusalem and related them to the various people, but tribes, and that is a key part of it here. Here's another graphic. I like this one. It's not very clear, but the 12 gates into the kingdom of heaven, named for the 12 tribes, and the apostles' names are over the 12 gates that are in heaven. So it's apostolic, and here entrances for the tribes. But heaven itself had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon. That's in the book of Revelation. So you have a city that has walls that are great and high, and it has 12 gates. I was just noticing in the scripture here, verse 5, there the thrones for judgment stand, the thrones of the house of David. In Jerusalem is the throne for judgment, and the thrones for the house of David. That is, the governorship under David, the kingship, passes on to the descendants of David. And who is the most important descendant of David? Jesus, right. And so it really speaks about the governance of Jesus, about his kingdom's rule that will be over the whole earth in the end time. And so the pilgrim in going to Jerusalem, and of course this continued on, 1,000 years after David was dead, they're still thinking about the thrones and the house of David, which is going to rise. So they are very much prophetic, looking for Jesus to come, and their prophecies related to that, like Psalm 24, lift up your head, O ye gates, that the King of glory might come in. The gates are for the King of glory to come in, and he will come in one of these days. But so the point is, the pilgrimage was going to meet with God when the temple was there, but now that the temple is not there, we're all similarly going toward the New Jerusalem in the pilgrimage that's on. That's the spiritual idea that I wanted to illustrate. The Huldah gates into Temple Mount would be some of the gates. That's not one that's mentioned, but that's there. I just happen to have pictures of that. This one is called the Lion's Gate, or St. Stephen's Gate. Anybody know why it would be called St. Stephen's Gate? What's that? That's right. This is where the first Christian martyr fell, St. Stephen, at these gates here. There's Linda right there. But here you see those lions. That's what gives it the term the Lion's Gate. but bearing in mind that these particular walls were built by Suleiman the Magnificent. I mean, that was, how would you like to be called? Suleiman the Magnificent. They called me Suleiman, but I like my whole name, Suleiman the Magnificent. But anyway, it takes a certain amount. But this is the gate, and when you do a tour, when you enter into the old city, this is the typical place. So the bus comes and drops us off right here, and because this is too narrow for a bus to go in, and you walk through these gates, and right to the right is the church. This is one of the Crusader churches dedicated to Mary, but it's the one where everybody sings in, because it's pure stone, and so you want to sing the slowest and most beautiful harmonizing song that you know, because the reverb is several seconds long in there. And everybody goes in there and sings. You know, the poor priest, that's in charge of it, he's not in charge of anything. These groups come in and they just start singing. And so anyway, but that's the Lion's Gate and the point of entry into the old city for pilgrims today, for us. This is the Damascus Gate. So this is where a lot of your Arab types would hang out. Whenever I've wanted to get an Arab taxi, which sometimes you want, when I've gone into the West Bank on my own, when Linda and I went up north into the West Bank, we got a taxi from here, and I just have a pastor friend who wants to go down to Hebron. I said, well, go to the Damascus Gate, get a taxi there, because it'll be an Arab taxi, and you'll want that when you go down to Hebron, because you'll have less issues. And so anyway, but that's the Damascus Gate. It's a famous gate. This gate is the Zion Gate. And I noticed, like, you see all these pock marks in the wall, these little pock marks. Those are bullet holes, not holes. They're, where a bullet has struck it and chipped out a piece. That was from 1967. So when the Israelis were coming into the Western Wall, they came in through this entranceway. And because, you're only a couple hundred yards from the Western Wall. And, these gates are interesting and cars literally drive in them. But you come in here, and then you see that arch there? You got to turn right there. You make this sharp turn, and then make another turn and go on into the area. So it's a lot of the Crusader era gates are built like this, and so that anybody coming in has to slow down. Like a horse riding in. If you're coming in at a fast clip, you're likely to both be on the ground, because these stones are actually fairly, you would think they wouldn't be, but they're actually pretty slippery, partly because they've been walked on so much. And these have this kind of a shiny yellow hue to it, and they've been essentially polished by feet. And so walking along there. But here's another picture. I think took this picture 25 years ago almost. Because I think that's my son right there, and I think that's Linda and Barbara Gopin, her friend. But anyway, but look at all of the bullet holes. First of all, you got to wonder who's doing the shooting and are they aiming, because, but I think when you're firing automatic weapons at a fast clip, they're going every which way. And so I think my brother, who's retired military, told me, I think that the average hit rate was like 750 rounds per hit. So, in war, there's a lot of shooting that goes on without a lot of hitting happening. The bullets are flying everywhere, but it's not a lot's being hit. But anyway, that's the Zion Gate, and that's you can also get off a bus there and go in, which we sometimes do. This is the Eastern Gate. I took this picture from the Garden of Gethsemane. So it's kind of a cool picture, but the Kidron Valley is between here, and the road. There's a road down here. I think I probably used a telephoto lens on this. I think it's the only what? Maybe I'd have to think about that for a second, but I think so. Yeah, I think it's the only double arched. This one is the Eastern Gate. in the Bible times, you entered through this gate to go into the Temple Mount. And so there was an alignment with this eastern gate and the gates of the temple. So literally there's a spot on the Mount of Olives where you could look through this gate and see directly into the temple. So they were all lined up in order. And today they're closed because the Muslims heard that Jesus would return through those gates. So they did two things to solve the problem. They walled it up like this. That was going to solve that. And then this is a Muslim cemetery right there. And so they knew that no self-respecting Jew would walk through a cemetery, especially with unclean people in it. But and so, you build a cemetery and wall it up, and you're going to keep Jesus out. And so, that's what you call a lack of understanding. From inside Temple Mount, you can't go down in there. They don't allow people inside the gates. But it's a thick wall. Obviously, I mean, you can see how far forward that wall is. So this is actually a building inside there, and it's a mosque now. There's evidence that there was churches use in there in times past. And you go down these stairs right here. You see the handrails on either side. And but anyway, they don't allow only special times Muslims go down there, but nobody else can go down there. But it's where does it go to? Well, when you come up, this is a platform here that you see on either side, and that platform itself, Temple Mount is not uniformly level. So this is at a lower level than so you come up here, you go 75 yards, and you walk up 20 steps, and it's another level, and then you go another 100 yards or less, and you walk up some more steps to get to where the Dome of the Rock is. So it's terraced, and so this would be the lower part. Yes, sir. Right.
The Israelis have control of Israel.
Right.
It's always confounded me why, for lack of a better term, they would tolerate Muslim control of the Temple Mount and that area right there.
Yeah. Well, Israel took that area in 1967. When they were doing all that shooting right there, that's when they took Temple Mount, and there was some movement to want to keep it, but it has the mosque and the Dome of the Rock, those two important buildings, and so for the sake of peace, they gave that back to the Muslim control, and so the Muslims actually control Temple Mount today, and in East Jerusalem there are lots of Muslims. There's, I don't know how many, could there be 1 million Muslims that live in Israel and that have Israeli citizenship? So it's a multicultural country. And East Jerusalem, right outside these gates would be an area that's primarily, it would be all Muslim. If you like going to the left in this picture, you're going up toward Mount Scopus, and that's a Jewish area. If you go to the right, you come to the village of Silwan, which is all Muslim, although there have been a couple of Israelis that have bought property right in the middle of it. But, that's what it is today. I have a book of old pictures from Israel, and here they have a picture of Silwan, and it says that when the picture was taken, like in 1898, there were probably 50 people that lived there. So, hardly anybody, and Muslims, but only maybe 50. Today there are thousands that live there. But in any case, the Israelis had it. They could have kept it. But for the sake of peace with the Muslims, they gave them control of Temple Mount. and so you're not allowed to go up there on Fridays or other times. I mean, I try to get up there whenever I can on Temple Mount. I've been denied a couple of times, and I got kicked off once. I was reading the Bible up there to a group, and the guy came and ran me out because you're not supposed to be reading religious books that are not Muslim up on Temple Mount, but they don't seem to appreciate that the Bibles are not contained in paper anymore. Now your cell phone so you can hold up your phone like you're taking pictures, and you can just reading the Bible right off the screen there. They would never know the difference, and they don't know the difference. I have gotten away with. But I also was kept from taking a Bible up there. I had a Bible. I was going up on Temple Mount, and when they screened me coming in, they made me take it out of my pack, and I had to leave it there, at the entry point. And fortunately, it was still there when I came back around afterward. But they're not always a friendly bunch up there, and so when we take our tours, we always list that as a place that we'll go, conditions permitting, because if conditions don't permit you, it's not going to be that pleasant up there. I've never had an issue other than getting kicked off. Most of in Israel, there is a difference between Arabs and Muslims. Mostly they would be Muslim, but there are also Christian Arabs. Like the Christians of Bethlehem are Arab primarily, and there are several places, villages that are Christian in Israel itself. So there are definitely Christian Arabs. I don't believe so. Yeah, I'm not very sure about that, but although I think you can, but I don't think you're required to. But someone could fact check me on that within 2 minutes, I would guess. Yes.
They do have Arabs in the Knesset.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Muslims in the Knesset that serve in Israel.
Right. Yeah, they've been elected, and so, yeah. And when you hear anything about the law of return, the Arabs want the statement that anybody whose family once lived in that area has the right to return. And the point of that is you do what they do all over Europe and everywhere. You flood the zone with immigrants, and pretty soon there's more Arabs than there are Jews, and it ceases to be a Jewish state. And so I was listening to a debate, I forget where it was. I guess the New York mayor's race, yeah. They're talking about the communists said, well, I recognize Israel's right to exist. And I think it's Cuomo, what a bunch of doofuses they got running for mayor. But anyway, he said, as a Jewish state, you can hear him calling that out. And Mandami just ignores that comment because he's willing for Israel to exist, but not as a Jewish state. Just let all the Arabs come back in, and then, one man, one vote, one time. It would be the rule there. But anyway, so this is keeping on going. Herod's Gate, a couple of pictures there, the gates. The next one is the Dung Gate. Literally for, when you got, thousands of animals up on Temple Mount for sacrifices, you that are farmers understand that if you got animals, you have other things. And you need a place to get rid of that. And so, not today, but there would have been, I think you take it out and dump it. I don't know how far away they went to dump it, but, probably into the valley. It was customary in ancient times. That's what the rivers were for. So you dump stuff down in the creeks and let wash it all away. That was Roman sanitation. Wash it into the creek and hope you're not downstream getting something to drink. These are the gates as they exist today. This is the new gate, as it's called. Yes, sir.
Looking at all the different gates, there is a gate called the Garden Gate. Is that part of this?
Not existent today. No, I don't think there is a gate that goes toward what you would think of as Golgotha today. Just because, well, first of all, you'd have to define where Golgotha is. Yeah, well, I mean, there is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is the historic place of it. And then, since the late 1800s, a British general found a place that's the kind of the Protestant, the Garden Tomb, as it's called. And Protestants like that. I mean, I don't think it's authentically the site. It definitely feels better to Westerners than the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, because we like our trees and our gardens and flowers, and they had a different way of celebrating that. But anyway, so this is the Joppa Gate, headed toward Joppa. Here's a picture of the Joppa Gate as it shows where it is. And then this opening that was created for German Emperor Wilhelm II, so he could enter in 1898. The Ottomans opened it up so he could ride into Jerusalem as a triumphal entry in a way. So those are the gates, and there still exist, as you can see, significant walls around Jerusalem, and these are just some pictures of those walls. So in some parts of it, they're quite severe and significant. It is. There is bedrock underneath it. They're right. Yeah. So, I mean, finding rocks in Jerusalem is not that hard, and bedrock in particular. But these are some of those walls. This is toward kind of the Jewish section of Jerusalem. This picture here shows you some kind of the conglomeration of walls. So you got an Ottoman tower, current city corner walls, and then a medieval tower. And this one here shows, you've got the Ottoman tower. So the Ottomans were from the 1500s to the 1900s. Then Hasmonean and Herodian. So Hasmonean would be first, lowest down here. And there's the bedrock that you're talking about. And then there's some carved, that's Herodian stones there that are carved to fill in the gap. And it's not my horse. I mean, 'cause down here is grass. And so, yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's for scale. Yeah, I mean, it would accomplish that. So, and that right there is a Martian that I don't know what but anyway, yeah, so this, you're all looking at different things. I'm pointing out the stones and you're looking at horses, Story, that's what happens when you go to Jerusalem too. You're talking about one thing and people are looking at something else. And you could just be talking gibberish and nobody would know the difference. They're not paying any attention anyway. Like I say, I've been a preacher all my life. I'm used to it. Yeah.
You know how you see these big stones from off the Temple Mount?
Right.
Edges of the walls?
Yeah.
What did they do with the stones from the temple itself? You don't see as many stones around.
Well, I don't have a picture that would show that, but the temple itself and all that was basically just shoved down into the valley, and so it was cleared off. And a Roman emperor, to make sure they didn't do anything else, cleared everything off, plowed it, and plowed in salt into the ground so nothing would grow there. And so they basically turned it into a garbage dump, Temple Mount. And so, well, yeah, the gold. Yeah, I'm sure the gold in the fires, melted, and so, but they probably look for it. Here's another interesting picture from inside in a certain area. You notice here the dirt is quite high, but this you can walk the walls, and that's kind of a fun nighttime thing for people that aren't too tired. Is you can walk these walls at night, and it's lit up, And so you can just see the city in a different way. Here's yours truly. Oh yeah, here's a couple. These are pictures taken at night, obviously. Captain Obvious here. But taken from the city walls, so you can see the tour. Anyway, so the walls of Jerusalem, they have a significance here. Our feet are standing in your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is like a city that is built, that is closely compacted together. All cities would be, I guess. That's where the tribes go up. But the thrones for judgment, the citadels, the walls, these represent the rulership of the city. For the pilgrims, they are thinking back to David, but there's a prophetic element in it, in that they are thinking about the day when the descendant of David who is to come, meaning Christ, will rule from Jerusalem. So its walls, its citadels, its gates all point to the future. They point to what is going to happen. And if I get to that, the point that I'm going to make ultimately about all of this is that when you approach the Lord, you want to think about ultimate outcomes as well, not just current situations. So they're thinking about the ultimate outcome. And what is the ultimate outcome? You're going to heaven. The ultimate outcome is you're going to go to heaven, and you will be with Christ. You'll rule and reign with him. You will be, you're an heir of God. And so, you need to know who you are and what your destiny is. Your destiny is heaven. Your destiny is with Christ, not to be battered about by life. And I suppose a lot of people feel like they've been kind of battered around by life. Most of us feel that way, I suppose. So you've been battered around by life, but that's not your future. Your destiny is security. Your destiny is safety. Your destiny is being on the winning team and the rule of Christ. And so they thought about these things as they made their pilgrimage, but thinking about ultimate destinies is very important to you here and now. There's been movements, I'm a child of the King. That's actually a pretty good way to think about it, because you are a child of the King. You do belong to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And I like to think of myself as a soldier in the army of God. I have my place, and I'm happy with my place to fit into the army and to be a part of the team, and as you are. We're all in this together. And literally that is the point that's next, is together, yes.
I suggest everybody needs to start taking horseback riding lessons.
I think I know why.
It suits you to know how to operate this animal before you get in that market.
Right. Well, you were wondering about what that horse was about. That's so you can get that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. So very good point. And get a white horse. That's better than a black horse.
I have one, and I was hoping, I'm praying that he will be resurrected with me.
Maybe you will. Okay. So the next aspect that I want to emphasize here is verse 1. I rejoiced with those who said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. And this is where the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to praise your name. And the emphasis here is that the journey is not a solo journey. It is not a solitary walk. It is a journey undertaken with tribes, with families, with groups. They went up by clans, by groups, by tribes. So each tribe had their entry point. And so you knew who you were, but you went with your tribe. with your family. They traveled in large caravans, large groups. I mean, it's safer that way, but it's also more enjoyable. You know, you've got all the relatives together, and we're all going together, and it's going to be a great time. And so the emphasis here is that it's not a solitary event, it is a group event. Salvation is both personal and corporate. You know, the church is being saved. We are part of the church. So it's not a bunch of individuals going to heaven, it's the people of God. And so there's connection there. And that's why I was glad when they said unto me, let's go to the house of the Lord. You know, we have a kind of a family on Telegram, I think it is. And so our family channel, just pointing out to everybody that they needed to get ready for Christmas, because, you know, when you get kids, then they get married, and now it gets more complicated to get everybody together. And then you get grandkids, and that gets more complicated. Then you have great-grandkids, and that gets more complicated, especially when, you know, we only have grandkids getting married, now no great-grandkids. But, you know, pretty soon you got a lot of people and a lot of different families, and they all want to be together at the same day. Well, that's not going to work. And then when you get to be, you know, with our stage, you know, you're not the center of the show anymore, you know, and that's why, you know, we try to give as much money as we can, so at least you have somebody have some interest for some reason, right? And so anyway, we have, last year we had such a hard time. I put out the word. I said, now we're going to all get together, and so this year we're all going to get together on December 28th. That ought to conflict with nobody, right? Not Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day, a couple of days to recover. And so on the 28th at 5 p.m., we're getting together at our oldest daughter's house. And I was just making sure this week that all the kids knew and all the grandkids knew. They needed to tell their in-laws, you know, that no, you can't go anywhere on that day, because that's the day when the Featon clan is going to get together. And so we've taken the weakest spot, the 28th, you know, so that shouldn't, but, you know, but it's a family, right? And so people go their own way, and you know, time passes, and pretty soon so do you. But anyway, but the spiritual life is a community event. It is not a singular event. Now, we always think in terms of, well, I got saved. Well, I did. I got saved individually. There aren't group salvations. But when you become saved, you become part of a group. You're part of the kingdom of God. You know, Christ is the king, and we are his subject. We are his people. And this is emphasized in this when it talks about the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, to praise his name. And we are tribes. You know, we are families, but, you know, Bethel Church, for example, is a tribe. You know, this class is a tribe. We're a group that has connection to each other. We're not just solitary people. And we should think in those terms. You know, we have pastors, we have leaders, we have teachers, we gather around, you know, certain flags, and, you know, and I think like denominations are kind of tribes, in my opinion, that they are, you know, what distinguishes most denominations these days is not their doctrine, but it's their tribal history. You know, like in the Assemblies of God, you know, we have been the people who have been looked down upon for the last 100 years. You know, we have not been the chief members of society. We've kind of come from the bottom up. And there is a certain, you know, when I was a kid, for example, you know, first of all, we were poor, but I came from Aloha, which is right outside of Beaverton, but Aloha was not, it was like, they made fun of us if you were from Aloha. You know, and when you go to a little church and they speak in tongues to boot and do other wild things, you know, so you were just on the outside looking in at life. You know, you were not in the in crowd, in the in group. Well, when in that way, you are part of a tribe. And so the other people that are in your tribe, you get it entirely. You get them, and they get you. They get how you think about things. Linda was saying the other day, when she was a kid growing up, there were certain things you didn't do because the tribe didn't do that. For example, the tribe didn't go to movies back in the day when when movies were actually quite good. I remember Gone with the Wind had the bad word. But think about that. Going to a movie back then was good. Now everything's good, and there's no sane person that would want to go to a movie today. There's too awful. Generally speaking. But if you're in a certain tribe, you don't even need to be told this. You understand how it is. Last week when I made the joke about smoking, we all knew if you were Assemblies of God, you did not smoke. And you didn't dance. So you don't dance, you don't chew, you don't grow with the girls that do. That was like one of the points of doctrine. Well, that's a tribal doctrine, right? And so you're part of a tribe. Well, that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. And other tribes have other things, but the big shock that's going to happen to a lot of people when they get to heaven is that they're going to realize there were a lot of people there who they let you in, so there'll be, I think there'll be a few surprises, from people. But but the idea of tribes, I'm trying to emphasize the groupness. I'll come in a second, Bob. I'm trying to emphasize the groupness. That we're not just solo operators, and we are part of the church. And so being part of the church, building the church, supporting the church, making the church successful and strong. This is part of what we do as a tribe. And so you say, well, I don't really get that much out of it. Well, don't worry about what you get out of it. Worry about what you put into it. Because you're contributing to the tribe. You're contributing to the organization. And sometimes, and it's probably true that there's a lot of people who put a lot more in than they get out. But the fact is, you're still part of the tribe. And it's necessary for you to be there and to support the tribe because that's what you do when you're part of a family. That's what you do when you're part of a tribe. And sometimes you just have to overlook certain people because, in every family, there is somebody, right? When I was a kid growing up, my mother's brother was named George, and he was a sheep herder. And he was an odd duck for sure, and he was constantly spitting. So you'd be talking, and he had this twitch, and he'd spit, I'm sure he'd from chewing tobacco or whatever, but his twitch and spit, and I'm pretty sure he never married for obvious reasons. But that was old Uncle George, and it was always entertaining when he came to the family events, because it definitely gave you something to talk about. But he was part of the family, right? And so Uncle George, and every family has at least one of those, right? And every family has one of those. And I don't know what it is about today, but every family has, people with funny political views, it seems like. And so which makes, these days of division makes certain gatherings a lot more difficult, Thanksgiving and, stuff like that. But anyway, you're still a family, and you got to do the best you can do with what you're dealing with. And so everybody, I'm not telling anybody how to do their business, because families are really complicated. And so you do what you have to do to survive, I guess. That's what you have to do. But anyway, Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Yeah. Well, it has. And is likely to keep on changing. And it'll keep on changing.
We had more no's than we had positive yeses now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was definitely different, for sure. But you know, we are who we are, and we came from where we came from. You know,
Hard to get the old out of the new.
you know, it's yeah. I mean, no matter how old you get, you still remember a lot of things. You know, I mean, my mother. I remember when the King of Kings came out. You know, the modern version. My mother refused to go because, you know, sure as shooting, you know, if she's in watching the King of Kings in a theater and the Lord came, she's pretty sure she'd be left behind, you know. I mean, that's the way people thought and acted in our tribe. You know, I know some of you came from other tribes and you can't even relate to this. But anybody who grew up in the Assemblies of God a long time ago understands exactly what I'm saying. Yes.
Well, I'm one of them that grew up in the Assembly of God. In our tribe, in our little town, we had certain people that would monitor other people.
Oh, yeah.
So these two girls belonged in the choir. They sang in the choir, but they would happen to be walking downtown and they walked past the show, and that was a no-no. They didn't go in, but they just looked to see what was playing. Well, these two old biddies from the church saw that. They got kicked out of the choir. I mean, that's just so.
Yeah. Wow. That is tough. Yeah, when I was at Life Center in Tacoma, there was a lady there named Emma Johnson, wonderful human being, but she was kind of the patrol chief of the choir. And so, you know, if you're in the choir, I mean, this is the 1970s, right? Linda can verify this. But if you showed up and you were wearing earrings, you couldn't sing in the choir. You had to take your earrings off. Oh, yeah, all that stuff, you know. I mean, this was Tacoma First Assembly of God in the 1970s, you know. But then again, when I went to Europe in the 1970s, the women were told not to wear pants because only prostitutes wore pants. In Europe in the 1970s. I'm just saying, that's the way it was. I mean, I went with a college group, and none of the girls could wear pants on that, and this, you know, this is Willamette University and Europe, and so you know, it's a tribe, you know, and the point is we're part of the tribe, and there's going to be some odd stuff in the tribe, you know, but the important thing is don't let it keep you out of heaven. Yes, Linda. Linda says we need a support group for those kind of people. Yeah, well, yeah, and I know that there's a generation that a lot of that was really hard on. You know, and you find a lot of people that grew up in those days who aren't serving the Lord today because it kind of blew them out, and that is a sad thing. Well, let's see here. Let's just wrap it up here. Hebrews does say, let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. Let us encourage one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. Don't give up on the tribe, especially when it comes to because the Lord is coming, and we're going to need each other more than ever. Stand firm to the end, yeah. The key phrase, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you prosper. May there be peace within your walls, prosperity within your fortresses. Because of my brothers and friends, I will say, peace be with you. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good. So just think about that from a policy point of view. Why are we pro-Israel? We are pro-Israel because they are the people of God. Not because they're godly, because they're not. Not for any reason other than the fact that Jerusalem, we pray for the peace of Jerusalem because Christ himself will rule from Jerusalem. And you cannot get past the fact that Jesus is the King of the Jews, and that he is going to rule from Jerusalem. And, you know, you can have policy disputes with the Israeli government, and, you know, people are entitled to their views on that. But I was talking to a relative of mine about this, he's a little bit less supportive of Israel, talking about this. But I said, you can have your disagreements with Israel, but don't ever lose sight of the fact of Jerusalem and Jesus, because God has a plan, and he's going to bring that plan about. And just as a matter of wisdom, you never want to find yourself on the opposite side from God. That's just not a good place to be. And so at a minimum, you can fulfill these passages to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Everyone can do that. But, I've supported Israel in its various decisions, and I'm glad that America, historically, not every president by any means, but most of our presidents have been very supportive of Israel. And by the way, I know this, you will love this. One of the most supportive actually was Bill Clinton. He was very supportive of Israel. And there's a reason for that. I'll tell you that story, and then I'll wrap it up. When Bill Clinton's pastor was dying, and Clinton was already rising, he called him in, and Bill Clinton went to see his pastor. And his pastor said, kind of as his dying words, I forget what exactly it was, but it was something to the effect of, be good to Israel. Don't get on the opposite side of Israel. And he actually did pretty good. Hillary was not as good as her husband, Bill. And some Republican presidents, like George Bush Sr., have not been as good toward Israel as they should have been. Our current president is probably more overtly pro-Israel than any we've had in quite a long time. Harry Truman, just go back to him, he recognized the state of Israel within 8 minutes of them declaring their independence. 8 minutes. And the U.S. State Department did not want him to do that for fear of offending the Arabs, but he ignored them. And the reason he basically, they said, he locked himself in the White House because he knew what was coming, and he didn't let the State Department get a hold of him. But he said that he acted in the way that he did because he had gone to Sunday school as a child, and he had learned the things that we're learning, and it definitely disposed him in a certain direction with regard to Israel. And I do think that is the correct disposition in terms of political speaking. America doesn't have to support everything Israel does in every instance, but as a general rule, you want to be on that team. And because I do believe, in spite of Israel is quite a liberal country, actually. And morally speaking, they're not in line with where they need to be. They're ungodly to a great extent. But still, God did not abandon Israel when they were disobedient in the past. He dealt with them, but he didn't abandon them. And he is not going to abandon them even in their ungodliness today. And I think that Zechariah 12 speaks of the day when the Spirit of the Lord is going to work in Israel and is going to bring them back around. But as we migrate toward Jerusalem, you always want to be thinking, what's the future of this place? What's the future of its gates, its walls, and its citadels? And it is the rule of Christ. That's the future. Okay, let's let you go here, and we'll pray, and you can be on your way. Father God, we do pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We pray for wisdom on that side of the ocean and wisdom on this side of the ocean. I pray, Lord, that those who love you and those who love your ways will be supportive of Israel to the greatest extent possible. But help us, Lord, to be also supporters of our tribe, of our church, of the people of God, of one another who are part of the family of God, to help and bless each other as much as we possibly can. And now, Lord, as we go our separate ways, I pray that the peace of God that passes all understanding will rest and abide with us all, both now and forevermore. Amen.